When an empath stops forgiving, something terrifying happens. Carl Jung discovered that, in this moment, every mask begins to rot and fall away, not just from others, but from themselves. The faces that once seemed tender reveal manipulation. The relationships built on kindness unmask themselves as exploitation. And worst of all, the empath discovers a horror that freezes their veins. They have been wearing the greatest mask of all, the mask of endless forgiveness, the mask that has been draining their soul drop by drop. Picture it. You forgive them again, the betrayer, the one who twists your trust into a noose, the one who takes your kindness as proof of weakness, the one who treats your empathy like a well that can never run dry. You smile, you whisper, "It's okay." You swallow their guilt so they can rest easy, while you lie awake, questioning your worth in the silence of the night. But this time something is different. The peace you used to feel never comes. Instead, you feel it. Rage, not fire, not explosion, but a quiet, sacred rage, the kind that rises like a shadow from the depths of the unconscious. Jung called it the collision with the shadow, the moment when the darkness you buried for years finally claws its way into the light. And once it arrives, nothing remains the same. Here is the secret Jung uncovered. An empath's endless forgiveness is not compassion, it is survival. A mask worn in terror, terror of abandonment, terror of conflict, terror of being seen as unworthy. They learned young worth is measured in silence, in suffering, in how much pain they can endure without complaint. Jung called this the sacrifice of the authentic self for acceptance. But when the empath stops forgiving, a rupture occurs. The entire social ecosystem built on their self-sacrifice begins to collapse, and the masks begin to fall, first from others, then from themselves. And in the rubble waits the shadow. For empaths, the shadow does not hold evil. It holds everything they were forced to abandon: self-preservation, righteous anger, sacred boundaries, sharpened like knives in the dark. Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." For the empath, that darkness is not corruption. It is instinct. It is the part that knows when they are being hunted, the part that refuses to bleed endlessly for others. When empaths stop forgiving, they do not become cruel. They become whole. They awaken the self they buried alive. Jung identified patterns in those who reclaim their power, what I call the 8 signs of sacred rebellion. And the first sign, the energy stops leaking. Instead of absorbing every shard of other people's pain, you finally whisper, "Is this mine to carry?" That is where the awakening begins. Jung warned that stripping away the persona would feel like standing naked in a storm, terrifying, but necessary. The privilege of a lifetime, he wrote, is to become who you truly are. Yet to become authentic is to betray the audience that adored your performance. Sign 3, the manipulation becomes visible. This is where the darkness sharpens. Jung's insights on projection reveal the horror. When the empath stops forgiving, automatically the veil rips apart, and the grotesque tactics hiding behind smiles become visible. Love bombing, excessive praise meant to extract forgiveness, guilt trips dressed up as vulnerability, compassion sharpened into a weapon and turned against you. Jung wrote, "Everything unconscious is projected." The awakening empath no longer projects their integrity onto others. They stop seeing people as they wish they were and finally see them as they are. Sign 4. The guilt loses its power. Jung observed that guilt often comes not from within, but from chains forged by those who profit from your compliance. But when the empath stops reflexive forgiveness, a strange immunity spreads through their psyche. The poison no longer works. You stop apologizing for having boundaries. You stop mistaking standards for cruelty. The guilt tries to bind you again, but its teeth are broken. Jung called this the awakening of healthy selfishness. It is not cruelty. It is survival coming online. Sign 5. The relationships sort themselves. Authenticity is radioactive. It alters every bond it touches. When the empath stops forgiving, a great sorting begins. Those who thrived on your silence slip into the shadows. Some gnash their teeth, trying to pull you back into your old role. But the few who remain, they respect your boundaries. They mirror your authenticity. They stay. Jung wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed, but only when both arrive unmasked." Sign 6. The anger becomes sacred. Jung saw it clearly. Anger is suppressed wisdom, and when forgiveness ends, anger rises. Not the reckless fire of destruction, but the holy fire of protection. The no more that burns in your chest. You remember the boundaries you never set. You feel the fury of every violation you minimized. This is not toxicity. It is information. Your psyche screaming the places you abandoned yourself. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. The pain of seeing how you were treated becomes the fire that forges new boundaries." Sign 7. The pattern recognition activates. The empath's intuition, once buried under endless forgiveness, now awakens like a predator in the dark. Patterns leap out where once there was fog. The cycle, transgression, fake remorse, love bombing. Repeat. You see it across faces, across voices, across years of your life. You spot emotional predators before they reveal their teeth. This is not paranoia. It is discernment sharpened to a blade. Jung called it differentiated consciousness, sight unclouded by emotional fog. Sign 8. The self emerges. The final revelation. The encounter with the self, not the ego, not the persona, but the integrated totality of who you truly are. The silence breaks. Your voice returns. You discover needs and desires you buried beneath the rubble of accommodation. And you realize they are just as valid as anyone else's. Write this down. My breaking point became my breakthrough. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And when the empath stops forgiving, they finally claim that privilege. But Jung did not romanticize this metamorphosis. He called it the dark night of the soul, a social death before rebirth. Friends vanish, family accuses, guilt claws at you in the night. Because your old identity, the forgiving one, was built to keep them comfortable. Jung warned, no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. The empath must descend into their own psychological underworld. They must face the rage, the pain, the skeletons of every silence they swallowed before they can rise. And when they rise, something terrifying happens to the world around them. The great unmasking begins. The narcissist can no longer hide. The manipulator can no longer twist. The vampire can no longer feed. Your clarity is a mirror, and mirrors are merciless. But the deepest revelation comes when you finally see your own reflection. Endless forgiveness was its own manipulation, a way to preserve relationships at the cost of yourself. Jung called this the recognition of the shadow. And though it is a brutal truth, it is liberating. Because now, you no longer forgive from fear. You forgive from wholeness. Not immediately, not cheaply, but consciously. Forgiveness that includes justice. Forgiveness that requires truth. Forgiveness that remembers the wound, honors the pain, but refuses to rot in resentment. Jung wrote, "Forgiveness is not the suppression of a justifiable reaction. True forgiveness honors the wound while releasing the grudge." And when the empath stops bleeding energy into endless forgiveness, that energy returns home, and it transforms into something else entirely: creative self-expression, the art of a soul that no longer bends. They finally have resources for themselves, for their dreams, for their healing. Instead of consuming everyone else's drama, they begin to create. Instead of abandoning their desires to serve another crisis, they start reclaiming the passions buried in silence. They invest in relationships that give energy instead of draining it dry. This is not selfishness. Jung called it individuation, the slow, terrifying, beautiful emergence of a whole human being, someone who contributes to the world from fullness, not from emptiness. And here is the ripple effect Jung saw: when one empath awakens, the virus of authenticity spreads. Your courage to set boundaries gives others permission to set theirs. Your refusal to enable dysfunction reveals the system that depends on your silence. Your raw self-expression whispers to others, "You don't have to perform to be loved." And that is why your transformation feels dangerous to those around you. Because you are not only changing yourself, you are changing the rules of engagement for everyone orbiting your life. Jung's individuation also carried a prophecy: conscious relationships, not wounded halves clawing at each other for completion, but two whole beings meeting without masks. When the empath stops forgiving on command, they become available for this kind of connection. They attract people who can meet authenticity with authenticity. Mutual respect replaces mutual wounding. Love grows from overflow instead of lack. And in these relationships, forgiveness is not a constant bandage, because the wounds are not inflicted in secret. Conflicts are faced as they arise, not buried until they rot. Individuation means integration, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. For empaths, it means holding both compassion and discernment in the same trembling hand. It means caring without carrying. It means loving without losing yourself. This is the state Jung called psychological wholeness, responding not from wounds but from the full range of human strength. And then comes the most brutal stage, the sacred disillusionment. You realize the endless forgiveness you once offered wasn't growth. It was stagnation. It wasn't sit divine. It was denial. True evolution demands dissent, boundaries, truth-telling, the courage to honor your own worth as sacred, not disposable. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That includes becoming someone who forgives consciously, loves authentically, and serves from wholeness. And the body knows. When the empath stops absorbing the world's poison, the flesh begins to heal. The fatigue that clung like fog begins to lift. The nervous system exhales for the first time in years. Even the body's betrayals, its anxiety, its autoimmunity, begin to soften as the war within finally ends. This is not magic. It is the body's natural response when boundaries return. Jung saw that this path creates wisdom. The empath becomes what I call the wounded healer, no longer drowning in other people's storms, but standing as a lighthouse, a presence, an illumination, guiding without chasing, shining without burning out. This is warmth with boundaries, care without collapse, love without erasure, and every step of this healing breaks chains across generations. The cycle breaker effect begins. You model healthy love for your children. You refuse to repeat family dysfunction. You prove that empathy does not require self-destruction. Each boundary becomes a seed planted in the collective. Each act of conscious forgiveness is a cut in the old web of exploitation. Here lies the final paradox of the empathist's journey. When you stop forgiving others compulsively, you finally forgive yourself for staying too long, for betraying your own boundaries, for mistaking trauma for love. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And yet, this is the liberation. The empath who once forgave the world finally forgives their own reflection. So hear this. Your forgiveness is sacred, not cheap, not automatic. Sacred. It is not candy tossed to whoever demands it. It is a conscious act, offered only when the soul is ready, when justice has been honored, when truth has been faced. Jung knew individuation always demands a refusal of what diminishes you, so that you may say yes to what honors you. Trust the process. Trust your age. Trust your boundaries, because they do not make you cruel. They make you real. And the world does not need more forgiving masks. It needs real empaths. Those who love from fullness. Those who serve from choice. Those who forgive from wisdom. When the empath stops forgiving, automatically, every mask falls away. Theirs, yours, everyone's says. And in that final unveiling, something terrible, something beautiful emerges. Your authentic self,